Thank you so much. Yeah, she's got that one. All right. Town of North Smithfield Halliwell Review Committee meeting for Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. We will begin with our first item on our agenda with roll call. Mr. Nigerian? Here. Mr. Ogier?
Here.
Mr. Mayo? Here. And the chair is here. And it might be a little slower because our secretary's not here. Second item on the agenda, public comment. Any members that would like to speak, be heard? All right. This is the biggest audience we've had to date, I think. So thank the four of you for coming. All right.
Two staff members.
Hey, we're gonna take what we can get. Okay, at this point. Agenda item number 3 for discussion, consideration, and action: the October 5th, 2023 meeting minutes. Give everybody a minute to review those. If there's any comments or corrections, let me know.
I move to accept.
I have a motion to accept. A second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Great. All right. Agenda item number 4 for discussion, consideration, and action. Update from BH+A. Okay. So I'll hand it over to you.
I'm going to try standing next to the podium. So is this picking up my voice? Is this good? Okay, fantastic. Okay. Just so much easier not to be behind this. When I'm solo without Joel, I don't wear my heels, and it kind of means this is a little difficult for me. Okay, so good to see everyone. Good evening. Happy belated Halloween. I'm representing BH+A this evening. Joel sends his regards. I'm going to go through where we are in the development of the site. Updates include a more defined or refined site plan. Likewise, the building plan has kind of gelled a little more since last we spoke. And then we have a cost estimate, what I would call schematic design cost estimate, though I don't think we actually are quite at schematic design. But nevertheless, a good check on where we are in terms of costs related to square footage and amenities, let's say. Okay, want to go next? Do you want to just drive that back to that screen? I don't know what it'll look like whether it shows up. Can also, here, can I drive for a second? It's there, with these controls, this keyboard here. Gotcha. Okay? All right. So you can go to the next one. Okay. So the same overview I gave last time, just to quickly review the strategies towards developing the site. Basically, the existing Halliwell School is in the most, let's say, prime area of the site. The site, if you were divided in half, the right side is largely dry, buildable land, if you will, and the left side of the site on the screen, if you want to go to the next one. Keep on going. There we go. One more. Forgive me. There we go. So this diagram just shows some different schemes we had looked at earlier in the development of the site. Basically, the general takeaway is the right side of the site is buildable. The left side of the site is primarily wetlands. And right now, we're in the part of the investigation where we're looking to understand exactly where those wetlands are, to understand how close we can get to them. Right now, our strategy to be safe is basically to only develop the area that has already been developed. So in other words, the asphalt, the hard surface, even to go as far as areas that have been mowed or developed by the town as part of the school project, that is fair game, if you will. And then we're staying away from putting anything new in non-school space because we don't know if that might impact wetlands or what we might find at this point. Okay, yeah, next. Yep, keep on going. So I'm going to start by talking about the building plan and the developments there. Go ahead next. Great. So we proposed two options last time. One was what we were calling option 1, which was a community center with gymnasium. Option 2 was community center, gymnasium, and pool. So right now, this is the first floor plan for option 1. The major changes or updates that we made versus the last plan we showed was basically reorienting where the community center was in relation to the fields. So the previous scheme had the community center on your left side of the screen, and that was far away from the ball fields. And so that kind of didn't make sense because there's an adjacency or a relationship between those two programs, right? So we flipped the building so that the senior center, community center would be closer to those fields, and at the same time also flipped the community center vertically so that the food service core, which is in red, was at that lower right-hand corner, which is closest to the fields. And that allowed us to really take advantage of synergies, if you will, to have the food pantry and the commercial kitchen and the concession stand, all those food service programs right in one condensed, concise area, and at the same time having all of those really close to the fields. This plan also shows the inclusion of 2 exterior accessible restrooms. So again, if you're talking about how the community center and the ball fields relate and support each other, that makes those key support spaces accessible and close to the fields. And so those are, they're not in red. So if you have the red of the food pantry, concession stand, and kitchen, just over to the right, you see 2 little small gray boxes. Those are the restrooms. Yep.
They look like single restrooms.
They're single stall restrooms. They would be very similar to what you have here. They both would be accessible size to accommodate someone in a wheelchair. You could look on other projects. We've looked at not having them be gender neutral in essence, and we can certainly look at that. We can look at having more than just the 2. This is similar to a project we had done in Sudbury, Massachusetts, where we had exterior restrooms, and this is basically what we provided there, and we found that that worked well. But certainly we can look at adjusting that. So just to walk you through the plan. So again, community center is on the right-hand side. You have the area in pink or purple, that's the multipurpose room. It's now about 2,500 square feet, which is slightly larger than what we had before. It has a stage still that's located page up. Then the area in green is circulation. So you see that there's a large green area in the center. That is the lobby for the gym. And then immediately to the right, that is the lobby and lounge living room space for the senior center, community center. Just north, if you will, just page up from that area where you see the tables and chairs and little cafe tables, that's the circulation for the building. That is a primary stair and an elevator. One revision that we made to the plan at Jeff's request is to look at eliminating the second elevator we had that was associated with the gym. And so now there is one elevator that gets you access to the second floor of the gym, as well as the community center, and that is over on the right across from the stair. Other amenities or features to the community center on the first floor, you have a large game room, which is that grayish-purple color, and you have a large patio that's accessible from the multipurpose room and the game room. You have the same support spaces, I should say, that we included last time, which is 2 offices, a nurse professional office, a break room, a reception area, as well as the mechanical spaces and those kind of back-of-house spaces. So in this concept, the community center is built first. And if you want to go to the next slide. That first phase would include a small vestibule that would be demolished to accommodate the second phase when we build the gym. The gym would be the second phase, and it includes everything in yellow and green that's noted as phase 1B gym. And then the third phase would be optional program rooms. So in the gymnasium concept, you're walking into this main lobby. It's a generous double height space. It's an area where you could see having receptions. It's also an area that has a lot of glass, so you have transparency. You can see directly into the gym. So it's a space that really can have a lot of interesting functions. Then to the left, you've got locker rooms for men and women, and then some small offices for a recreation department or whoever is basically overseeing the operations of the gym. And then the program rooms are pretty straightforward. There are 4 program rooms that are about 750 square feet, and the gray boxes within them are intended to be closet or storage space, but they also could be converted to restrooms in the future if the need required. So that's the first floor. And you want to go to the second floor? Fantastic. So the second floor in the community center, you have the program rooms. You have a dance studio, which is over 1,000 square feet, so it's a really good size for a dance center. You have a large program room, which is about 750 square feet. You have a computer lab, you have a smaller conference room, and then you have another large program room. Again, this is the point of access for the second floor of the gym. So you have the elevator that gets you access to the track, as well as stairs. You have 2 stairs, so you have a stair that you can take from the main lobby in the gym, or you can use the stair that's internal to the community center. And then all the way over on the left, we have offices, mechanical, and restrooms that would be for the walking track, and then a small stair that would be the means of egress out of the gym, or second means, I should say. So that is the concept, what we're calling option 1. Then option 2, and you can go into the next one, is basically that same concept I just walked you through, but with the addition of a pool. And so the pool is what we're seeing all the way over to the left in blue. It consists of a large pool, a lap pool, and a kiddie pool, as well as lockers that support that. And then the program rooms in this scheme are oriented instead of vertical, horizontally. Anyone have questions on the plan so far? I realize they're kind of hard to read on the screen. Go for it.
Your program rooms
Mhm.
are obviously oriented differently in each version. What if you wanted version 1, and then you wanted to be able to accommodate the additional buildings after?
So if I understand you, you're saying do the...
One version eliminates the other, what you're saying.
Yes, you're either doing the program rooms in option 1 or the pool and program rooms in this option. So if you wanted to do the program rooms first and then the pool, that's what I hear you're asking?
No, I'm saying one eliminates the other, so you either got to pick one or the other.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's
So one flaw, if you will, of these two concepts is that you couldn't build the program rooms first and then the pool. But we can certainly look at designing it so that we can do that.
Did you look at taking the program rooms and putting them to the right of the community center?
No, I actually didn't look at that. I certainly can.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that because there's been some discussion
Mm-hmm.
within the community as to what the building could and should be with regard to the multi-generational center.
Yep.
And, you know, in part of those discussions, there are 2 groups, 2 separate groups. So you've got a senior group, and you've got other generations, I'll refer to them as.
Yep.
And that each one would like, apparently, have some dedicated space. And so that, you know, some version of this building could be that community center that you're looking at appears to be set up similar to what would be a conventional, smaller type senior center. If you were to take those rooms and put them maybe to the right or even adjacent to the left if the gymnasium wasn't there, that could possibly be used for, you know, scouts or other functions or other, the other part of the generations that would not be seniors for their programs.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking into. I think the motivation, if you will, for these 2 concepts here was to have something that was easily priced. In other words, 2 schemes that were kind of plug and play, so you could easily itemize all the different components of the overall center, again, to facilitate pricing.
So you're mentioning pricing.
Yeah.
So have you priced out these as modular units? So
Yes.
that
Yeah.
community center, quote unquote, senior center, whatever, you've got value on that? Some value on the gymnasium separately?
Yep.
Value
That's included as part of the gym.
Okay. And then a value on the community rooms, those function rooms,
Yep,
as a separate value?
yep,
Okay.
yeah.
You're jumping the gun, Mark.
Well, I-
No, no,
That's what I want.
yeah, so, yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, so you have option 1A, 1B, 1C. Further on in the presentation, are you going to break it down 1A, 1B into a larger slide so we can actually see? I can't, my old eyes can't see anything.
I realize that it's a little, I don't know if it's actually maybe even a little out of focus too. My old eyes aren't great, but I was going to say we do have an extra copy if you want to look at something printed out. Yeah. Yeah.
Just the question I've got is, you don't have, I don't see from the public here, a community center and then 10 program room as an option.
Yes, and that's what he was getting at.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's, I think that would be something we want to include, and I agree. Because that could be phase one, totally phase one. That way you've got the 4 program rooms and the community center, you pulled off of the gym, pulled off of the community. We've got a good center which would accommodate multi-generational and senior programs. I think that's something that we should have. And we don't have it here next time. That's a good point.
So I think this is the extent of the plans. There's a summary slide, the next slide. Oh, forgive me, second floor. Second floor, same as the first version, so we can keep on going. Yeah, just a summary of the revisions that we made that I spoke to earlier. Flipping the building, moving food services to the corner that's closest to the fields, eliminating the second Lula is just a special kind of elevator that means that it's really only meant to go 1 floor. So we eliminated that second elevator. We enlarged the locker rooms, and we looked at the facade and doing something that was a little more modern than what we'd shown previously. Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier on kitchen concession. Is that the kitchen, are you designing it to be a dual purpose so that it can be a concession that's accessible from the outside in case there is some outdoor recreation there?
Yeah, so
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
I read it correctly.
So every earlier scheme had a concession stand of some type. Yeah, one was a freestanding, like booth, if you will, near the fields. Another one was associated in that gym phase. But then when we started to understand that the community center most likely would be built first, it made sense to try to find space within that phase. And then if we were doing that, that meant that you could take advantage of the fact that you already had a commercial kitchen, because I think there really is some,
So is the kitchen?
you know, yeah,
Is that adequate for congregate meals?
yes.
Is it certified and licensed?
Yes, so the two, just to define, a commercial kitchen is generally understood as a kitchen that is sanitary from the point of the Board of Health. The Board of Health would sign off on it, as well as sized for the capacity of larger groups. And so this kitchen satisfies both of those requirements.
The reason I ask is because I think in an earlier presentation, the gentleman architect had mentioned that it was more like a kitchen that would be in your home.
So,
That other individuals,
Yeah.
you know, they could make sandwiches or something. I'm like, I don't think that's adequate.
I can, just to talk briefly about the kitchen design that we typically see, we don't like to do either or. We don't like to do a kitchen that is purely residential appliances and cannot be licensed by the Board of Health. We don't like to shut that door, if you will. But at the same time, we don't like to have a commercial kitchen that is so sterile feeling and is only accessible for a professional chef that would know how to use a professional stove. You know, you get the idea. So it's often a hybrid.
I think the key is that it is adequate in order to serve meals if
Yep.
at some point, as the community progresses, they offer congregate meals for seniors or even, you know, anyone in the community.
Yep,
Yeah,
agreed. Yep.
Mark, I think that was a conversation that we've had with Mrs. Tebow as well, that we were looking to have a commercial-style kitchen, also with Parks and Rec, the cooking classes that they want to teach in that fashion. So there have been numerous requests from very different groups for this commercial kitchen.
Okay, so then the next slide is going to get into renderings. So we've been working at kind of giving conceptual renderings so you can get an idea of what this building might feel like on the inside. We gave you one rendering early on that showed you the outside of the building, but now you're getting to the inside and seeing how the spaces really work. So this is that foyer or lobby that gets you into the gym, that main space space, and you can see the glass and the connections that you have through to the gymnasium beyond. And then the glass that's right at the end, that's the senior center. So you're seeing directly into their space. You've got the second stair that gets you up to a little balcony, and that connects you to the gym, or I should say the second floor of the gym.
Rachel,
Yeah.
if you may,
Yep.
I just want to remind everybody that this is still very highly conceptual at this phase. This is not the final product by any means, but I just want to put that disclaimer out there for people watching online,
Yeah.
people that are here. This is just the very first pass at what this could be looking like.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to stress that this process is iterative, and this is starting a conversation and a dialogue. So we're introducing an idea, we're looking for feedback and reactions, and then we'll go back and refine it in order, almost a reflective listening exercise. So yes, please take that to heart. So in this concept, you have the large double height space I was referring to. You could have a donor wall or a piece of artwork on that main elevation that you're seeing as you walk into the building. Something lofty and feels spacious and grand. Next slide. So this is the interior of the gym. You can see one of the major features is the second floor walking track. Go on to the next. And there's the second floor walking track. Any questions about the gym? Okay, you want to go to the next slide? And so this is my favorite slide. So no negative feedback. Now this is the lobby for the senior center, community center space. So it also has its own double height space with a lovely natural light coming in through a skylight. And this is basically, you are standing in right outside of the multipurpose room looking back towards the lobby or the foyer for the gym. So you're looking through those windows that we saw in the other rendering. You can see the living room space that has a fireplace and a TV and soft seating. And then there's some additional cafe seating that you could have in that. It's almost like an atrium. Okay. Next. And then this is the pool. So the pool, as I mentioned, it has two pools to it. It has a larger lap pool and then a smaller one for kids in the general public. And I don't know if Joel has ever gotten to this, but I think all three of his daughters did competitive college swimming. So he's very particular. Like, the first thing he said when he looked at this rendering, he was like, there's glare. You have to fix the glare. And then I reminded him it was facing north, and the light just wasn't positioned correctly in the rendering. And he was like, okay. So. All right, next. And then this is just a typical program room, just to show you, give you a feel for what those, we can call them classrooms, program rooms. They're very multifunctional. This one here shows tables and chairs. The flooring, we can put in a flooring that has a spring to it or like a cushion, so this room could be used for both classes and more physical activity, gross motor stuff. So a lot of flexibility with these spaces. Okay? And then this is my least favorite image. This would be the multipurpose room, and I think we haven't really hit on the aesthetic or the feel for this. I think that we have a modern feel in the rest of the building that hasn't quite gone into this room. So I'd like to look at other concepts for it, but I think the important takeaway for this view is that because there are no other programs, no other rooms above the multipurpose room, it gives you the opportunity to push that ceiling up high, just like in the room we are in now. And so the higher you can push that ceiling, the more formal, the more lofty, the more gracious it feels, and it can really start to become a really special space. We still, even if you put rooms on top of it, you would have a ceiling height of maybe 10 or 11 feet, but in a large room, that 10, 11 feet just doesn't feel proportional, and it almost feels a little squat. So there's a real advantage to this design that we should really exploit and discuss further. All right, next.
I'm sorry, Rachel.
Yeah.
Could you go back to that first slide, or that last slide? The smaller wood panels, are those doors that go out to the exterior?
So they're actually closets.
Okay.
So I position the closets on the exterior, and then the larger one, that would be the operable partition. Then you can see the stage in the back. Yeah. Okay, you want to go into? So we looked at refining the elevations, doing something that was a little more modern. Basically, the first concept we showed you had gable roofs, We eliminated those to do something that felt a little more contemporary. So we have these flat roofs and square bays. And this is the language I think that we're going to look at developing. Of course, feedback's appreciated. And then in terms of materials, we're looking at a synthetic wood. That would be the brown color. And then the gray would be a metal panel. And then the light gray would be some kind of masonry. We priced it out as a split face CMU, but it could be any manner of masonry product. Okay? And this is just a section cutting through the gym and then the 2-story component of the community center and then that 1-story multipurpose room. And even in this section, we've started to move away from the idea of having the gable roof and the trusses to something more flat. Okay? All right, so then on to the site plan. You can go to the next one. So one of the challenges we have currently with the site plan is making sure that we have enough parking. If we were doing the community center and the gym, I think we'd be looking to have about 150 parking spaces. And that assumes that you're not having an event in the gym and an event in the fields at the same time. So that's what's going to create your surge parking need. If you were to do the pool, you would even need more parking, maybe 50 to 70 parking spaces more. And that is what we don't currently have the capacity for. Though I will stress that without the survey and delineating the wetlands, there is the possibility that we would have that space. But we're being conservative right now. And we're assuming, again, that we're only developing the areas that are previously developed that we know don't have an impact on the wetlands. So, for example, the parking. We're using the exact same footprint as the existing parking area. I will say that one parking space, and I realize this slide is hard to read, but that one little gray L-shaped piece that's towards the top of the screen, that's an overflow parking lot of about 30 spaces. I do not know if that will be possible at the end of the day once we know where the wetlands are.
Rachel, is that,
Yeah.
the overflow parking roughly just a little north of the existing basketball link?
Yes.
Orientation, is that where the existing basketball court is?
It's taking over more space than that, but yes, that's the general area. And you see right where it says community center, you see how there's like a little blue splashy thing behind it?
Yeah.
That's wetlands, or that's what we understand to be wetlands right now. Again, we need to get into a professional survey and actually flag the wetlands and understand what we're dealing with. But that's my concern with that one space, is that already we're seeing that there's wetlands very close by. And so we just have to be concerned with that. So we've been looking at parking in earnest. Some of the moves, if you will, that we've made to refine the site plan is we've pushed both the multipurpose field and the community center building further south, page down. Again, that allows us to work within the existing footprint of developed area. And we've reoriented the softball field slightly so that we can get additional parking between the two fields, which I think will be very beneficial to those programs. And then it has the same program elements that we've discussed earlier. It has the basketball field, it has the dog park, it has the community gardens. This site plan shows in more detail how that emergency access route would work. One thing we took great pain to do was to have the multi-use field and that emergency access lane work with the existing topography to really limit cut and fill. So I asked, for example, I was talking with the civil engineer and I said, can we sneak in some parallel parking or parking that works off of that access road, kind of taking advantage of the fact that we already have asphalt? And that would be tough to do. When we get more topography information, maybe we can look at that in more detail, but right now we're thinking that that probably wouldn't work. Yeah.
How big is that multi-purpose field?
The multipurpose field?
Yeah, what's
Oh, that is a good question.
40 yard by 100 yard or?
You're catching me off guard. I don't know, I'll be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't want,
No,
if Kyle was here, he could chime in, but,
no problem, thank you.
yeah. Any other questions on the site plan? No? Okay. So, if you want to go to the next slide. It's not worth it. Try going to page up. See if that- Well, I think luckily we're almost at the end of the presentation. If you want to keep on working on it, please do, but I'll talk while you try to tweak. So the rest of the presentation concerns schedule and the cost estimate. So the cost estimate, let me actually grab a packet so I can talk to that. So we did a schematic design cost estimate, which is really the first type of estimate that goes beyond, oh, perfect, great. Good, awesome. All right, if you want to go to the next slide, that's great. Okay, so the cost estimate. This is a schematic design cost estimate. It develops a cost estimate a little further than simple square footages. This looks at the total cost of the project. So this is the cost to build the building, anything physical that's associated with the building. It includes anything that goes inside the building, such as furniture or equipment. And then it also includes what we call soft costs, which is all the labor and personnel that is required to help build the building. So for example, you would have an owner's project manager, someone who's going to come in and basically command the project. That comes at a cost. You would have a clerk of the works, the person who oversees the construction project on behalf of the owner. That comes at a cost. Then there are designer fees, our fee, our consultant's fees. Those are the soft costs. So to walk you through the hard costs, this is anything associated with the building itself, anything that goes inside that building. It's broken out into 5 columns. This is the itemizing of the different components of the project. So you have the community center, that is the first column. You have the athletic fields, the second column. Gymnasium is the third column. The program room wing is the fourth. And then the last column is the pool and program room together. So the range in construction costs, the community center is about a little under $9 million. And I also want to just point out, I've rounded these numbers a little just to make them a little more palatable, just so they're not, 9 random numbers strung together. So the community center, it's about $9 million. With that comes some site work. It's not all athletic fields. You have the existing driveway that gets you into the school. Our current design presumes that is going to be ripped out and rebuilt. Then you have the egress road that's at the back. That would also be additional, as well as the parking that goes along with it. So that site work is estimated at about $2.5 million. Then you have a small fee for utility back charges. Furniture and fixtures and equipment, that's about $300,000. AV, so that's the projectors, the screens, everything that we're using tonight. That's around $200,000, and that number can vary wildly. That you can have every room have the same capacity like what the room we're in tonight, and that's going to push your number up. You can have some rooms that have an audiovisual cart with a TV and a cable box. That's obviously to bring numbers down. So there's a wide range of what that audiovisual means, and it's a very expensive component of the building. So just to be conscious of that. And so the hard costs, the total hard costs for the community center are just a little under $12 million. The athletic fields, you have about $1.5 million. I actually think this number is a little low, and I'd like to revisit it because it doesn't get into what type of field we're talking about, right? Are we talking about a turf field? Are we talking about, yeah, so.
I'll answer that right now, no turf field.
Yeah, so. I don't think it includes site lighting, for example. I think there are some under-assumptions, let's say. And since that's most likely, that seems like a really attainable part of the project, I want to make sure we really understand those costs very well. Then you have the gymnasium. The gymnasium is about $8 million. The program room wing is about $2 million, and the pool and program is about $10 million. So those are the hard costs, and then the next slide are the soft costs I was referring to. So again, this is the personnel that works on the project. So you have, for example, our proposed fee broken out for the different phases. Our fee, that first column for the community center, also includes most of the costs for the gym. We're assuming that it's one project together. some, you know, really, I have to say this, the largest cost is the architect and engineer's phase. And so the totals for the soft cost is about $1.5 million for the community center, $200,000 for the fields, $300,000 for the gym, because again, it's associated with the community center, $300,000 for the program wing, and a little over $1 million for the pool and program room building. If you want to go next. This last slide is just a summary. So this combines, it includes an owner's contingency, but then it combines the hard and soft costs. So it gives you a bottom line number. So again, these numbers are rounded. The community center is $14,765. The athletic fields are $162. The gymnasium is $9,260,000. The program room wing is a little under $3 million, and the pool and program wing is a little over $12 million. I will say, in terms of cost estimating and where we are in the process, this is also an iterative process. This is a point where we can look at this and say, okay, are we understanding the scope in the same way? For example, fields and their amenities. Is there something missing? Is there something that the cost estimator assumed that would cause this number to be higher? What projects have we recently completed that we can use as a reference? So we're still vetting out this cost estimate, and it's a way, again, to help us check to understand that we are on the same page in terms of program, amenities, materials. I always like, when I'm doing estimates and design, to over-design so that you can have a conversation about compromises and deletions, if you will, rather than starting with something that's so basic that you're getting, you know, forced into a corner, if that makes sense.
Rachel,
Yeah.
Can they, 1.2 million for the athletic and the outdoor, that truly can't stand alone, can it? It's part of it is commingled and linked. You couldn't just do that for that amount of money, right? That's assuming one of these phases occurs with it, or no?
I think it might be possible, and under this scenario, that you're not redoing the driveway, that you're saying that it's serviceable and you can use it until you do a full building project. Likewise, the utilities that are on site. You would need to have the parking you have now. I think that parking lot, existing parking lot, is about 70 parking spaces. So that might be a little underparked. So you might have to include some parking, which I did in that number. I took the parking number and prorated it, if you will. But then there's a question about the emergency egress, ingress lane. Is that something that's going to be required if we do sports fields? Or is it something that can wait until you have a building? So there's
So there's okay.
Yeah.
It still has to be both.
Yes. I mean, do you, for example, would you want to have a freestanding concession stand in that scenario? You know, those are the questions. Questions to talk through, if you will.
And I think, as we all know, we've heard the community, we've listened a lot to everybody, and we've taken all of this information and basically took that wish list from our survey, from all the discussions we've had at the Pumpkin Fest booths that we've done over the years, the conversations that we've had in the past with a lot of the community members, and this is everything that's been asked for. So we didn't eliminate anything right off the bat, so I'm in full agreement with Rachel and how we're saying this is an iterative process. So just to kind of give everybody an idea, these numbers may be shocking to some folks, they may not be to others, but know that there's still a lot of work to be done. We're only at step 1. When this becomes a reality, we're going to be at step 10. So just so people understand where in the timeline we are and how we got to this point, is that it's everything in the kitchen sink at this point.
But I also think that should probably allow the council, I know we have, the chair is here and the executive is here, but they're not here formally. I don't think we should get into too much analysis until we give them the opportunity to just react to what they see. I agree wholeheartedly. These numbers, sadly, for those who aren't familiar with this reality, these numbers are not staggering for what it is that we asked them to design. And I think it's the old messenger aspect. we asked them to do what they did, which is give us the whole thing. And then we can now start to look at it, get the council's reaction as to direction, knowing that the focal point all along had been the community center. But I don't think we should spend a lot of time tonight talking about, but the one thing I will say in that regard is I really like the transition that you made on the exterior architectural. It really captures kind of a somewhat contemporary without being too over the top.
Good.
You introduced the multiple materials, which gives you textures and colors, and I really like it. I think it's very, it achieved what we asked you to do. So,
Yeah, so I think there are I appreciate that. I think there are multiple ways to approach the budget and the cost estimate. It's a further conversation about strategies. There are multiple ways. It can be a value engineering strategy where you're saying, I'm going to replace the stone floor with luxury vinyl tile, something to that effect. It could be a value engineering exercise where we say, let's look at a pre-engineered gym instead of something that's stick-built. Or it could be a conversation where you're saying, cut out $2 million, and then we come back to you and say, this is how we'd propose doing that. So various ways to further that conversation.
Just generally, what outfit level do you have this at?
In terms of,
Like say 1 to 10 as far as the finishes and the fits and all of that stuff.
I would say it's mid-range.
Mid-range, so 1 to 10, 5, 6?
Sure. So I think there's what we would typically have in a senior center. And I realize this has changed over like the last 10 years where we've had obviously inflation and construction costs that have gone up quite a bit. But a typical senior center would have luxury vinyl tile in most of the rooms, maybe a wood floor or a engineered wood floor in the bigger spaces like the multipurpose room. We would focus the high quality materials on what is really necessary for function. So for example, good acoustic panels in the multipurpose room, a good spring-loaded floor for the dance studio. Then in terms of other finishes, the ceilings are usually, I would say 50% drywall, 50% acoustic ceiling tile with maybe 10% wood-flatted ceiling or something to that effect, something special. Millwork is usually all custom. I'm trying to think of other, and then the siding, the exterior. I think I'd said this last time that 10 years ago we would feel comfortable building a steel building for the structure. Today, in what we've priced out, the gym is steel. The rest of the buildings are wood. It is interesting. We're seeing a shift because of newer energy codes to starting doing heavy timber buildings, which is something we can discuss. And then the exterior, we do a lot of hardy, a lot of cementitious fiberboard. That's a very, it's a good product at a low price point. And then maybe that would be 80% of the exterior is cementitious fiberboard, 20% is a masonry veneer. This is not that. This is much higher percentage of masonry veneer, a nicer product. Instead of hardy, we're using that, what I was calling the faux wood product. Metal panel, which is something we typically don't do. So there is a higher level of exterior finishes. And then on the interior, you saw we have a ton of wood slatted ceiling. That floor was priced out as stone. So there are some nicer finishes that I would love to see, but I won't, that's not the hill I'll die on.
What I'm thinking, Mr. Chair, just to be proactive, is that for those of us in this world, the two of us, for example, we can readily understand when you give us those criteria and say, okay, a 30% finish reduction would equate to this. I mean, some of us can understand it, but I'm assuming that one of the first questions from any number of people is going to be, okay, what do we need and what do we not need? And how much can we, if we choose to, meaning the collective, how much can we reduce without really altering the integrity of the design and the purpose? Because we also have to be careful when you start to get into this a la carte approach. You can a la carte yourself into something that, when it's done, will beg the question, why did you do it this way, you know? you wanted to save something today, but we're living with this legacy for 40, 50 years. So there is a balance between offering the powers that be and the people what degree of finish they want and they're willing to pay for. But that at what point that by degrading that finish, do we get to a point where it's just not productive, it's not in the best interest in the long term? So
Yep.
I think we probably, if they can prepare a general overview, which you tried to verbalize, or you did verbalize, indicating that some percentage savings can be made with these finish options.
Yep. Yeah, there are definitely many ways to skin this cat. And one thing I'll just point out that we have that works to our advantage with this particular building is there's a very prominent front side, but a significantly less prominent back side. Oftentimes you're working in a building that all four sides of the building are very highly visible and very important. And that obviously raises costs because you have to be as attentive, if you will. That's not the best word, I apologize, to all four sides. Where in this one, the back side, we have opportunities to look at other materials and prioritize the front.
Very much to our
Yeah.
advantage, because
Yes.
you can pick up quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the problems, one of our objectives or tasks, which might be a mountain to climb, is to take the sticker shock, if you will, away from these numbers for those who will look at them knowing full well what we've heard 1,000 times over the coming days and the week ahead with regard to the police station and the dollar value and what that means to some and what it doesn't mean to others in the community. And you want to try to keep things on a positive note and try to find a common ground where we can progressively start to look at what we can do and what we're willing to do.
Yeah, and I think it's important in terms of public's understanding of those two projects. They are very different projects in terms of, for lack of a better word, price points, and what we would refer to as the longevity of the building. Typically, when we're doing a senior center, we refer to that as a 20-year building, which means that we expect the materials, and this is very general, but just as a concept, we expect those materials that their life expectancy would be 20 years. Whereas a school, a library, a police station, those municipal buildings are built to maybe a 40-year or a 50-year standard. And what that translates into is the structure. It's typically not wood. Sometimes it's often masonry block if you're talking about a school. And there's an expense associated with those choices. But what we're looking at now when this estimate says it's not 20, it's not 50, it's somewhere in the middle.
There's a lot to digest tonight that we have in front of us, so just want to make sure everybody's getting the ability to.
I have a question, Jeff.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at the chart up there, and it says all four projects at the start in November 2024, yet we talked about a phased approach pretty much all night. So that's not really realistic. I know those are just to price it out, but how would a phased project work? Would it normally be like, and just based on what you've seen from other communities, say the community center goes 2024, the community in the program wing, whatever, then is it usually like communities wait like a certain number of years, 3 to 5, like just for, because they're not all going to start. So those prices are probably going to adjust
Yes.
drastically, I'm assuming.
And I did calculate, at Jeff's request, I do have the escalation costs if you were to start any one of those components beyond 2024.
Okay.
So even for the community center, if you were to say, we're not going to start that till 2026, you know what that cost is, and then you know what the cost associated is if you were going to do the gym in 2027.
Okay.
But it just turns into a matrix that was hard to,
Yeah, I'm sure.
you know, if you gave me 3 examples, I could give you good numbers. But basically it's basically right now it's about 5% annual compounding interest to figure out what the cost is. And so, for example, the gym, the cost to phase the gym 1 year later is about $500,000. And then each year after, it gets compounded by 5%.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So I'm just curious, I mean, I just threw some numbers at this. It looks like if you divided the 4 million, that quote we have,
Mhm.
you know, you've got about a 75% gap, right, plus or minus. We have 25%
Gotcha.
of
Yep.
the community center, 14.7 million. So you can see that if somebody were to ask you the question, which will come from someone, what do we get for 4 million? It's pretty clear that it would barely exist. I mean, it would be bare bones, it would be without the field, it would just be, so that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
prepare you for, that we're gonna have to face the
Yeah.
reality that
Right. It,
what we have available to us is never going to be enough to
Right.
even do phase 1A or phase 1. And/or is it even possible to create a structure in that magnitude within a, say, a 4 to 7?
It could be, but it also might be penny wise, pound foolish, like you were kind of alluding to before. And we have not done that $4 million exercise for you yet. I don't
We-
want to confuse this
Right.
with that.
and I don't think
Yeah.
we've signed off on that proposal yet either.
Yeah.
We have the proposal from you that this committee has recommended to the town
Yeah.
council, but we're waiting on a few other things to get figured out.
But the reality, if, seeing what we see
Right.
in pictures, in presentation, and in the spreadsheets, one can kind of conclude that anything in the 4 to 6 million is going to be a very utilitarian, if at best, a shell.
I was going to ask you, Rachel,
Yeah.
the program room wing, because just thinking of the $4 million grant that the town does have currently, or is in the process of going through, the program room wing, if we were to focus on doing that first, so then that way that it starts, are all the MEPs systems in the community center, or is the program room have their own set of MEP systems that are broken out separately?
I believe it does.
Okay.
But this number seems to me to question it just like you are, so I'd want to confirm that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we've been always talking that the community center is phase 1, and that's what's going to drive this project forward and build the excitement for it. So it makes sense that all the MEP systems are oversized slightly for the community center, but then once we get those additional parts of the building added on, that we're not having to put in new systems or anything like that. We're just building off of the ones that were put in that first phase.
And I think a lot of if we were to do this all as one project, we wouldn't have one central MEP hub, if you will.
Right.
It would be broken down. You'd have a roof pack for the gym and a roof pack for
Yep.
the community center. That would just be, it's just more efficient that way.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. But things like, and we haven't even gotten to this, like the water service and all of that, that would be centralized.
And then, just for my edification, this all includes, the building sprinklered, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And also something that we didn't touch on, this is using the current energy code. So a very solid
Oh,
envelope.
yeah, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
which is changing next year.
And triple glazed windows. Yeah. So it's, yeah, that one's a hard one to keep up with.
Energy code always is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was very nicely done.
I know we're down a couple members tonight, so
Okay.
the opinions are a little quiet on this side of the table.
Fine by me.
I'll open it up to the floor if any folks out in the audience have any comments. This is the first time you're quiet.
Well, I think I'm shell shock or sticker shock, one or the other.
Okay, understandable. Yes, Mr. Carullo.
So the community center has 2 floors, right?
Yes.
And in line, the question's going to be coming, right? What can the community build for 6 million? So, flat roof, could the community center itself be built first floor first, and then a second floor later?
You could. You could. It's
So
not.
that's where
Yep.
we're pulling this back and trying to value engineer it, and trying to utilize the resources that are available immediately, currently. I know it'd be a more complicated project, and believe me, I get the penny wise, dollar foolish, I get the vision, but I also get the budget, right?
Of course.
So that's where the reality to the project
Yep.
comes in.
And
What is the
yeah.
community willing to spend
Mhm.
on this project today? And even if it costs more to expand in the future,
Yeah.
there may be a better opportunity for that expansion in the future based on the fiscal standing of the community at that time as opposed to this time.
Yep.
This project is in competition with another project, which I'm sure you understand. So trying to accommodate both projects and capitalize on something, there may be some there's going to be compromise that has to be had. And there are going to be hard questions asked. And people are probably going to not like the answers to those questions, but if the town wants to accomplish something, reality is going to have to take over.
Yeah, it's a feasibility study we're looking at right now. Yep.
I just want to put that out there so
Yep.
everyone understands.
Mm-hmm.
That there may be a way to do it. It may not be the optimum way with regard to, everything that's being discussed here, but it may be the only way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then we're dare I say, eager to have those conversations.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you look at it as a challenge.
Yes. There you go.
And so,
They're design opportunities, Mark, not challenges.
sign up. Thank you.
I hear the concern with doing the first floor and the second floor. My biggest concern from what I've seen is it's going to be a public bid job, and how can the contractor, when we have that first floor, how well is that coordination? Now we've had the first floor built. Now we have the contractor that didn't do the first part. We have a new one for second bid, the second time around. So there's a lot of challenges in overlapping, waterproofing, maintaining the building envelope, making sure that, there's a lot more intricacy with it coming as a public build. If it was a private build, it might be a little simpler, because you can get the same contractor, you can bring them back, they know the building, they're familiar with it, but that would, I hear you, and I understand where you're coming from, but that is one concern that I would have, just as an architect, to make sure that building is properly, the whole building envelope is properly maintained.
Yeah, as a concept or as a metaphor, analogy, I understand where you're getting at. Things we've done before, we've done mothballed spaces, that the finishes get done at a later point. We can have that conversation, and there are ways to approach it.
Can I ask a question? I'm just going to use these numbers just for reference. So do you guys ever assist or help communities in terms of funding strategies? So I don't see a reason why they would. I know there's going to be compromises, and those conversations do need to happen. But there isn't it's not out of the realm of a possibility of some type of public-private partnership, right? I mean, there's communities do it all the time. They fundraise, they have community fundraisers, local businesses. I'm thinking maybe like a CVS or another healthcare institution maybe donates to the nurses area and helps fund like a little clinic inside of there if they want. I mean, I think as we're having those design opportunity conversations, we should also be really pushing the boundaries on what we can do to raise external funds. So we're not saying it's just a grant and then a taxpayer bond, I think both can happen.
I think two exercises that we often do on these projects related to revenue is, one, we engage with a market analysis consultant who will say, okay, you've got X number of community centers in this area, and they're charging this amount to use the pool, or they're charging this amount for a program. So you can see what revenue sources are a potential. We didn't talk about this, but also they would look at what the operational costs are. So if you're building a big center, let's assume you'll need a full-time janitorial staff. So those costs we haven't hit on yet. But we look at that. But then the other thing I was going to say is that we also look at what that bond looks like to the average taxpayer. And that can be sometimes very helpful.
Right, yeah, I agree.
It takes that big number, which is shocking, and helps you understand, okay, this means $10 a month or whatever it is.
Well, I think that second prong, which we've been talking about at committee meetings in the recent past, is the second prong has to be the grant funding, grant writing and alternate funding. That has to start to run in parallel now, because nobody wants to float any more of a bond than is needed. And if we can get supplemental grants, corporate donations, as we had thought about, so we have to work with the council to try to enable what method how that takes its legal shape, so that
Right.
someone can start that now, so that we try to keep up
Yeah,
with.
it's almost like some type of philanthropy, like,
Yeah, and that focal point is going to be either grants or donations in kind.
Right. And with this master plan, though, once that's completed, we have a document to present to potential donors, to,
Yep.
partnerships that we have, so we can say, we've done our homework,
Mm-hmm.
and here's where you come in, once we get to this slide, so, yes.
I wasn't gonna say anything tonight, but I feel like I need to because Mark kind of referred to it. That's
Linda,
Taj
do you mind to
Mahal.
speak
I can speak loud.
I was thinking about the people on Zoom. They're not here.
I don't feel like, I wanna talk. No, that design is wonderful, it has everything that was on my wish list, and it's really great. We are a small community, and what Mark was alluding to, maybe we could build something, for the amount that we have. And Jeff, I had asked, if you've looked at the Gloucester Senior Center, if you looked at the Lincoln Senior Center, and some of the local centers, do they have every amenity that was there? No. But they're very adequate, they are very vibrant. All of the senior centers charge a membership from their seniors. It's usually nominal, but they pay so much a year. Some of them charge per class, for the classes. The one that I work with doesn't, because we've had grants, we've had 3B grants, federal grants that provide the programming.
Yep.
And there, as you were talking about with grants, there are many grants. You've got furniture in here.
Exactly, yep.
There are grants that can be used to purchase
Mm-hmm.
the furniture that's required.
Yep.
And I will tell you, many people in North Smithfield are members of the Gloucester Senior Center. It's lovely, and it actually looks like North Smithfield. It's, it's colonial looking, it's built on a slab, and that's the bad part, because there's no storage, the same as Lincoln. Lincoln's a little bit bigger, but they're all one level. They have big community rooms, they have them partitioned. They're very lovely, and they've been around a while, and they provide great services, but they all charge membership. I mean, it's not, like the Y charges, a whole bunch of money, but and some of them charge per class. So that is a possibility, and I think we should look at, I wish you would go and look at either the Lincoln Senior Center, or the Gloucester Senior Center, and even Smithfield, that's all.
Yeah, I will say in terms of looking at other centers, I would love if anyone wanted to take some trips to see them, and that,
I'll take you with.
yeah, I always love to see, I know what our centers look like, but I don't know what others look like, and it's really helpful.
What's up here look
I can
like
steal
New
ideas.
England? They look like New England,
Yeah.
they look colonial,
Yep.
like, like the houses you see on Greene Street, or, they look like us.
I'd be more than happy to.
Well, you give me a call, I'll take you.
All right.
I know all the contact people there, and they can tell you how much they.
I know, you all, everyone, like, every director knows every director.
I'll buy lunch. All right, I'll buy lunch.
Don't take it out of their reimbursables, though. Any other comments? I think what I might suggest we do to move forward is, given that we have a couple members absent tonight, I'll share the presentation. They can review what you talked about tonight. and I can gather some additional feedback from them to send along to you
Yeah.
in the next couple days, and then we can kind of start to consolidate that a little bit more.
And I'll send you through the full PMT estimate
Sure.
along with the spreadsheet and
Yep.
the escalating costs.
Okay, so for those of you that might be interested, I did ask Rachel to share with me the full estimate by their consultant, PM&C, who I've actually worked with in the past quite a bit before, so I can forward that to you folks who are interested in that. It is overwhelming if you look at it at first, if you don't know what you're looking at, but if I'll be happy to walk you through anything that you might have questions on.
Yeah, great.
I think you had one more slide for your schedule.
Do I? Oh, for schedule, thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, you want to forgive me. It's project schedule, we can go to the next one. So we are on schedule. I was happy to see when I was updating this presentation that nothing really here has changed. I was talking to the mic. So we're on schedule. I do think, however, that November is a critical month for this project. We have a lot of really important things in November, such as the site survey and getting that resolved. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, the wetlands are kind of unknown at the moment. That would really be nice to understand. We are starting to work on what I showed you there, the rendered site plan. That is based on a design from the civil engineer. So we are starting to really develop that and look at the reality of we have a lot of good information, absent the survey. We have a lot of really good information on the utilities. Sure, I can think of some other things, but the civil engineer is working in earnest and making good progress. And then the public presentation, we can talk about if that's a different format than what we have now. I think we had talked
Yeah.
about having that with the,
It will likely be another joint meeting with the
Yeah.
town council,
Mhm.
so we'll work with our members and to figure out when the best time would be for that.
yep. And so then December, we're saying end of December, we would have our final recommendations in a formal book as a deliverable.
Okay.
And I think we should have a discussion about what the content of that book is beyond the conversations we've been having. For example, outreach. If you have, if you had questionnaires that were filled out or any kind of supporting documentation, it'd be nice to collect that all into one document so that you have your Bible to refer to in a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year.
Yep.
It has everything about the project in all one place. I think that's what the value is going to be for that book. So just coordinating on that content a little.
Okay.
Yeah, in some ways, I think the appendix to this book might be bigger than the book itself,
Right.
but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, during the RFQ process, we included our findings and reports.
Yeah.
So that could just be, that includes our preliminary land study that Weston and Sampson did, our couple of our different reports and meetings that we had prior to with town council. So I can certainly throw that in with you.
How are we defining public presentation? Is that a presentation to our committee with a joint meeting with the council that's obviously a public meeting, or is it truly to try to get the public to attend? The reason I asked the question is that I think we really need to, before you go, quote, entirely to the public, they're always invited, get a sense of where we are. Because I don't think it would be productive to have a public presentation until we had solid feedback from the council as to where they were and what they were willing to support, not support, what they didn't understand, what they didn't understand, before we go to the people with anything, because otherwise I think we end up in one big potential mess.
Right.
And I'm wondering if November, given the holidays, we've come so far with some solid stuff that truly can be analyzed and debated. Do we really want to wedge it in between the two largest holidays for the most part and force people to attend when they're either Christmas shopping or what have you.
Right.
Or are we better off just delaying it into the new year when there aren't any vacations and holidays that we have to compete against?
No.
It's just a thought.
Yeah, I agree. We should have the meeting with town council prior to get additional feedback and get this committee and the council on the same page of where we are. And then, yes, I would say if there's going to be a further public presentation, that we do leave that till later. And then that way, if Doug or Council President Alves is getting asked questions about this project, we've all had a meeting, we're all on the same page. We kind of are all going with the same playbook, and then present that to the public. I agree with that. So, you might need to add one more line for January.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I mean, I'm not, I hear your concern, it's valid.
Okay. Anything else?
Great presentation.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Very, very thorough. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks very much, Rachel.
Yep, okay. Well, thank you. We'll follow up.
Yes, and I'll reach out to Chris and Scott and Lori for any comments, but if you guys, while you're thinking about it over the weekend, have any additional comments, shoot them my way, and we can,
Yeah, usually I put some behind.
Someone's going to say, do the program, do the outside.
yeah,
It's going to happen.
I know. Okay. So for agenda item number 5, we can likely skip over that for the joint meeting with the Multi-Generational Advisory Committee. I did attend the Multi-Generational Advisory Committee meeting this past Monday. And the discussion, I think there was still a little bit more organizational and feedback that they wanted to review about the council's decision on moving it to Halliwell with the grant monies. It seemed in general, the group was in support of moving the grant monies to the Halliwell property. And, you know, when I was there, I had just said, we want to work collaboratively with the group. We understand that there's a lot of impassioned individuals that take vested interest in what they are working toward. So I'll just reiterate what I said to them on Monday, that, you know, ultimately it will be the council's decision to decide the fate of both groups, whether it's a dissolvement, whether it's a reorganization. That's ultimately up to the council. That's not for us to say. However, I will say the Halliwell Committee, we've been at this for the past 2.5 years, 3 years, and I think we have a very good finger on the pulse of what the community has been asking for. But I also understand that there are people that bring in some additional expertise from the Multi-Generational Advisory Committee. So I would just really look to a way to work collaboratively with that group. However that takes shape is going to be a council decision. But I will speak for myself. I want to continue on this project. I don't want to be done at the master plan. I want to see this all the way through. You know, when we started, we wanted to see this process all the way through till we have a ribbon cutting, whenever that might be. If that's 5 years, if it's 10 years, if it's 20 years. We've always been steadfast to that. That's the reality of the situation. You know, the reality of the situation is this takes time. So, you know, it's, as I've said before, it's a year and a half to get the year and a half to get the documents completed. It's another year and a half to get a building built. And that's if we started tomorrow. And unfortunately, we're just not at that place yet. We haven't been given the green light for either group to just go. So again, collaboration is the name of the game for me at this point. And I think I will opine and say, I think there will be a lot of hurt feelings if either group is dismissed in any way, shape, or form. because we have been putting so much time and effort into what we've been doing the past 3 years. So I'm speaking for myself, but, you know, if the other members here would like to add anything additional, certainly welcome to.
Well, I mean, I think that issue needs to be put to rest. I mean, it's foolhardy for us to continue on this course if a third of what we're proposing is going to be achieved someplace else. So I think someone needs to, the powers need to make a decision and give a definitive direction. And also, at this point, we're either going to get the direction to advise the architects to give us the quote $4 million package or not, because we're at that point where substantive decisions need to be made. We've done everything that could have been asked of us and was asked of us, and so that's the next step.
Yeah, I think I agree with what has been said so far. I think that last council meeting was just a preliminary conversation in terms of what does the next phase look like. You know, I think, you know, looking at the $4 million, I think the first thing that needs to happen is that the grant has to get executed first, right? Because that's where some of the conversations have been at the council is can we get reimbursed for some of these soft costs, right? These site plans, the engineering up front, and get reimbursed. I think if we do that out of order, we run the risk of not being reimbursed. So I think as we start to look at the $4 million, that project has to come in a little clearer, I think is what the point you were trying to make, and that decision has to be made. But yeah, I don't see a problem with how both groups can't somehow coexist, but I think it is going to be conversations in terms of structure, et cetera.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and as of right now, our charge does not change. We've been charged to do a master plan. We're going to get a master plan. It's going to be completed, and we're going to move forward with that. What's done beyond that afterwards, again, is out of our hands. We can certainly recommend one way or the other, but it will be ultimately a council decision. Okay. Last item is for discussion, consideration, and action, recommendations to town council. I did send the BH+A September invoice for everybody to review. If there were any questions.
No.
But I would look for a recommendation to town council to approve that and
So moved.
pay that bill. All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor? Aye. The first and seconding tonight is really easy, so I thank you, gentlemen, for that.
Two choices.
All right.
I've got a question for Linda. CVS Health, who my son works for, I want to go by CVS Health. Have you ever approached them or talked to them or know of anything they've done to give money for programs that are geared to the health of the public?
Yeah, in my experience, and we have worked with CBS, we have worked with United Health, we have worked with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they have sponsored many things for us.
Okay.
And that's why it's out there.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, we're sitting here listening to this, and someone was saying get grants and do things.
Yeah.
CVS Health
They do.
would want to help a
Well, they do.
community.
There are grants for things like, well, you know, when you say, this was bought with a grant. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
there are grants for furniture, there are grants for, you know, that AV, all that
Yeah.
typical
Yeah.
stuff. There are grants, and they're really, and they're really not even hard to get. I mean, we got, actually from CVS, I wrote the grant, and I don't write, but I did, and we got a $10,000 grant
Okay.
that we were able to put into our program,
Mm.
you know? And I'm not a grant writer.
I'm talking about having them match the $4 million we got from the federal government to $8 million to do something that's a multi-generational, primarily geared to
I'm
seniors.
sure, yes.
You know, that would be the way to, that's
You
what
know,
I'm
it's
thinking.
there, but
Yeah.
you just have to look for it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so, you know, to think that all those things are, you know, a stumbling block,
yeah.
they're not.
Yeah,
All
Yeah.
these-
I think
willing to help. They're
There
not-
should be people out there, I
They
think that,
like that, you just put up a little
Yeah.
sign and say, thank you, you know?
yeah, right.
Or this wing, or this.
This swing, you walk in and it says CVS, right there, you know?
This room
Yeah,
was
right.
sponsored by
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. Sure.
Yeah.
You just have to go looking.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
no, thank you, thank you.
All right. Last item on the list, do you guys want to just do that in opposite order, or do you want to, for adjournment?
I'll, move to adjourn.
We got a motion, we got a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.